Nuclear war, aliens arriving on Earth, a deadly bioengineered virus. These are just a few of the terrifying possibilities that could take place in 2025. Will any of these wipe us humans out? Which scenario has the highest likelihood of causing destruction? And hey, what are some of the good things that could happen in 2025? The world in 2025 sees multiple wars taking place. Wars in the Middle East and Africa rage on, but maybe even more worrying is the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Russia has vowed that if long-range missiles launch from Ukraine and strike deep into the heart of Russia, this war will turn nuclear. There are even reports of a planned deployment of a nuclear weapon in space. In an age where multiple countries have nuclear weapons, mutually assured destruction has held check on a full-on nuclear war breaking out. But it's possible that this will end in 2025. If one country decides to deploy a nuke, it could launch a domino effect that quickly spirals out of control. Depending on the size and number of the weapons used, the destruction could be devastating. If the weapons struck the heart of big cities like New York, millions of people around the blast radius would be vaporized in white-hot fires. Millions of others who manage to escape immediate death will suffer horrific long-term consequences, radiation sickness and cancer. Dense black smoke would envelop the globe, causing temperatures to fall and a nuclear winter to set in. This could last up to 10 years. The only silver lining? We put the probability of this actually happening and creating worldwide destruction at 11%. Even if a nuclear weapon was released, it wouldn't necessarily become a world-ending scenario. Okay, so maybe it's not a nuclear war, but it seems more and more likely that we will see a world war. World War III. Over the past few years, we've seen how conflicts between two countries can morph into something more global. Russia and Ukraine are at war, America and the EU have been supplying weapons to Ukraine, and now North Korean soldiers have been enlisted to fight on the side of Russia. The Middle East war has stretched beyond Israel and Gaza to involve other countries in that region as well. As players align with one side or another, this could all snowball into a potential World War III. If World War III were to break out, how would you be affected? Well, if you're a young male, your country might need you to serve. Depending on where you live, you might have to leave your home entirely. Some European countries could be at risk of an invading army, while America, surrounded by water on all sides, enjoys a natural advantage. But these days, the nature of warfare has changed. Enemy drones carrying bombs might come buzzing around crowded cities, and their bombs might be launched from faraway cities. Our advice? Head for the hills, and by that we mean get out of cities that might be prime bombing targets. Even if you do this, though, your life will be upended and never be the same again. Based on the current state of geopolitical politics, we put the likelihood of World War III destroying humanity at 38%. But if war doesn't kill us in 2025, maybe a virus will. Not necessarily one that Mother Nature makes, but a bioengineered one. For instance, the H5N1 strain of the bird flu virus is deadly. It could kill over 50% of humans unlucky enough to catch it. Imagine that, half the population of the world getting wiped out. Thankfully, humans can only catch it from close contact with infected birds, but scientists trying to study the way this virus spreads have created a bioengineered version that spreads through the air and is far more contagious. And that's not the only case of bioengineering. Scientists have recreated the flu virus that killed 40 million people in 1918. They did this by digging up frozen dead birds from the Arctic and reviving the virus. While these efforts are being done to ultimately help prevent people getting sick, they are high risk. There's a possibility these lab-grown viruses could infect a researcher and then spread among the general population. If this were to happen, it would be like COVID-19 all over again. But depending on how deadly the pathogen is, it could be much worse. COVID had a kill rate of 3.4% of infected people, but something like that bird flu virus, you'd be saying goodbye to over 50% of friends who caught it. There'd be widespread panic as this statistic got out. People would be hoarding groceries and locking themselves up indoors indefinitely. Some infected people might start drinking bleach or taking ivermectin to save themselves. Other people might believe the entire thing was a hoax and refuse to take any safety measures. Sound familiar? With a virus that kills 50% of those infected, governments would declare national emergencies to try and keep people safe. In the meantime, scientists would be working around the clock to come up with a vaccine. If we faced this kind of an outbreak in 2025, at least we'd have some experience from COVID on how to go about creating a vaccine. But to be safe, I'd say keep an emergency kit of masks, bottled water, and canned goods, because we think the probability of this happening and ending the world is 30%. All right, instead of a bioengineered virus, maybe Earth will face a completely different threat. One that comes from outer space. You know which one I mean. An alien invasion. According to the Drake equation, there's a 53 to 99.6% chance that humans are the only life in the Milky Way. 53% that we're alone? Well, that's 47% that we're not alone. Aliens could definitely be out there. The question is, why haven't they shown up yet? Aliens could be out there detecting our existence in a number of ways, from the dirt in our atmosphere or potentially even the oxygen, carbon, and water vapor our planet carries. However they do it, if aliens did find their way to Earth in 2025, there are a couple of possibilities. One, they're hostile to humans. They want to be our evil overlords and extract our resources and brains. But on the other hand, maybe they're just a bunch of touchy-feely, friendly creatures with big eyes and funny floppy ears. The humans would only know after we communicate with them. Let's consider this scenario first. Governments would want to avoid widespread panic, so they'd probably declare an emergency telling citizens to stay home. Then, they'd work out how to communicate with these newly arrived creatures. Meanwhile, they'd likely be working behind the scenes to mobilize military technology. In case these aliens end up being hostile. What would happen if they were? Well, maybe they'd beam some of us Earthlings into their spaceship, or launch an alien bioweapon to make us all weak and defenseless. If they have tech that's far enough advanced from ours, well, we wouldn't stand a chance. And let's face it, if they've made it to Earth, their tech is pretty advanced. Good thing we think the probability of this playing out next year is a mere 1%. So maybe don't worry about becoming an alien's breakfast. But life on Earth could be destroyed by the one force that humans can't control. That's Mother Nature. 2025 could be the year a supervolcano erupts. I'm talking about Yellowstone. Yellowstone National Park is bang on top of a supervolcano site. The site has seen 3 eruptions. The first was 2.1 million years ago, throwing 2,500 cubic kilometers, that's 600 cubic miles of volcanic material. So what if 2025 is the year this massive volcano erupted again? If you're living in the United States, then good luck. States around the site would be hit with a massive amount of hot lava, volcanic gases, and a seriously big layer of ash. But it's not just nearby American states that would suffer. The effects of a supervolcano eruption would be felt worldwide in the form of a prolonged nuclear winter. The ash and carbon thrown up into the atmosphere will block the sun and cause temperatures on Earth to fall. Plant life will be affected, crops will fail, famine will break out. These effects can last for years, even a decade. The only good news in all of that? Well, we think that the probability of it happening is 0.00014%. Okay, I think it's time to think of some more positive scenarios. After all, this is a new year, and there's only so much doom and gloom that I can deal with. One major threat to humanity we haven't talked about yet is climate change. It's a challenge that feels closer and more urgent than any of the other scenarios we've discussed so far. But even in the face of such a massive problem, there are reasons to be hopeful. Around the world, innovative solutions are making real progress. And one of the most inspiring solutions comes from a company called Brazil Potash. Brazil Potash is addressing climate change in a transformative way by revolutionizing how potash, an essential nutrient for agriculture, is produced and transported. Potash strengthens crops, enhances soil productivity, and plays a vital role in feeding the world. However, 95% of the potash Brazil uses is imported from places like Canada, Germany, and Russia, requiring transportation routes that stretch up to 20,000 kilometers and produce massive greenhouse gas emissions. Brazil Potash is changing this dynamic. By producing potash domestically, their operations will not only reduce Brazil's reliance on foreign imports, but also significantly cut emissions. Through renewable energy and local production, Brazil Potash is expected to lower greenhouse gas emissions by 1.4 million tons per year. That's the equivalent of planting 32 million trees. Their work with the Amagi Group, one of the largest private soybean producers in the world, demonstrates their impact. Under a 10-year agreement, Brazil Potash will supply 550,000 tons of potash annually to the Amagi Group. And that's just the beginning. Brazil Potash plans to produce 2.4 million tons of potash per year, with 80% of production already secured under long-term agreements like this. By focusing on domestic supply, they're supporting Brazil's growing agricultural market, while drastically reducing transportation-related emissions by an estimated 80%. If you'd like to learn more about Brazil Potash and their innovative approach to tackling climate change, well, click on the link in the description. Speaking of solutions, let's explore another promising way we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions: nuclear energy. Could this powerful energy source hold the key to a cleaner future? Let's find out. The good news is, not all the news about nuclear is bad. Nuclear is some of the cleanest power available. No fossil fuels are burned, no carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere, which means our global warming situation doesn't get any worse. Now, due to the worsening climate crisis, nuclear power solutions are emerging once again, and in 2025, they may get a big boost. Right now, the use of AI is crunching up a lot of energy that's being generated by burning fossil fuels. This is dangerous because it's heating up our planet, and AI has a voracious appetite. It needs power to run through its calculations. But with huge amounts of energy being provided by nuclear power, we could use AI with abandon to crunch away and find cures for diseases. We could travel into space and solve pretty much any problem we want. We could use AI to figure out how to harvest all the energy reaching Earth from the sun, transforming us into a Type 1 civilization. We can use this energy to power flights to Mars. The galaxy becomes our oyster. If these efforts take off in 2025, well, we'll start blazing the trail to our fantastic new future without increasing carbon dioxide emissions. We give the probability of this taking off 35%. But how else can we change our climate? Maybe the billionaires could help out. That could either be a very positive thing or it could be the end of our planet. Let me tell you why. The idea is simple. It's a bit like the Yellowstone Supervolcano eruption, but happening in a much more controlled way. It's a plan to combat the 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit rise in temperature that at this point is written into our future. How would it work? Well, it would involve a few rich people deciding to address the climate crisis on their own. They'd load up some aircraft with chemicals that would scatter the sunlight away and inject these into the atmosphere. The only problem, we don't know what would happen next. Scientists can do all the calculations they like, but in the end, there's an element of uncertainty. It's possible that the billionaires attempting to geoengineer the climate might upset the delicate balance of climate and ecology today, leading to further catastrophe, natural disasters, crop failures, and famines. The chance that billionaires hack the climate undetected by the authorities? Well, we put it at 23%. But I'm not sure billionaires are going to do much more in 2025 other than just roll around in a bed of money. Maybe let's drop that lower. Okay, time to come down from the clouds. Maybe 2025 will be the year we figure out how to remove excess carbon dioxide from the air without destroying the planet. I'm talking about using the power of carbon-eating bacteria, a new type of E. coli. E. coli usually makes us very nervous because there are some strains that cause food poisoning in humans. But E. coli is a lab scientist's favorite because they multiply easily. Well, in 2019, scientists created a version that eats carbon dioxide. The way they did this is by depriving E. coli of carbon, which it needs, while at the same time making carbon dioxide readily available. As new generations of E. coli evolved, they started using the carbon from carbon dioxide to grow. If this did work, maybe we'd build E. coli farms that would work to remove carbon dioxide and clean up our air. Maybe we wouldn't have to worry so much about burning fossil fuels. So, will E. coli be harnessed for carbon dioxide removal at scale in 2025? Well, while the research is promising, there's still work to be done. So, we're going to put the probability of this happening at just 9%. Okay, while solutions to fix the climate crisis are being worked out, laundry and dishes still have to be done. Plus, driving, gardening, cooking, and walking the dog. The tasks of everyday life are endless. Will 2025 be the year when robots get fully integrated into our lives? Will they finally do all of our chores? Well, we already have some of this stuff, like robot vacuum cleaners and self-driving cars, but what would really be nice is a single robot that takes over all the boring household chores. Is that in the works? Well, Dyson has invented a RoboDog, a four-legged robot that can vacuum, mop, and blow away leaves and mow the lawn. A robot from Stanford called Mobile Aloha can put away pots and chairs, clean up, and even cook food. If these robots were to merge together, life would be a blast. Each household would get an all-purpose robot. Soon enough, we'd all have one for ourselves. Mine will be doing the stuff that I find a total drag. Maybe we'd even have robot girlfriends and boyfriends. Now, what's the probability that a 360-degree all-purpose robot comes together in 2025? We give that a probability of 28%, depending on whether we expect it to bake cookies or not. Now, if AI could do housework, well, for sure it could help us find a cure for diseases, right? 2025 could be the year when we finally figure out how to use AI to find the cure for everything. Today, 25% of kids and young people don't get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes until they're much older. AI has been used to figure out if a kid is likely to develop diabetes in the future by scanning their medical records. This could help with proactive management. AI is also helping scientists transform the way they deal with cancer. Doctors are increasingly using AI to figure out whether or not you'll get cancer in the future. In this kind of situation, your regular annual blood test may become a full body scan with an AI smart enough to differentiate between real risks and false positives. You won't have to be worried if you have something because personalized treatment will be worked out for you. But privacy will become a major concern. You'll want to protect your health status as you get to know about any health risks way ahead of time. And costs will be a major problem as this kind of intel doesn't come cheap. We give this type of future a 15% chance in 2025. Okay, we're pretty excited that AI might help figure out a bunch of diseases in 2025, but Meanwhile, another disease is spiraling out of control. Will 2025 be the year that humans turn into zombies? Zombie deer disease is spreading like wildfire among, deer, elk, and moose. It leads to the death of brain cells, forcing the diseased animal to walk all crooked and look like a zombie. Could this zombie deer disease spread to humans? Well, so far there are no reports of humans biting others, so thank goodness for that, but the entire world would likely go into a full-blown panic mode if human zombies emerged. People would stop hunting deer and moose and elk, that's for sure. Governments would spring into action and cull the populations of these beasts. And anyone who's eaten any wild game might have to get tested for zombie disease. Good luck with that, deer hunters. We don't know for sure if this is in our future, but with diseases increasingly crossing over from animals to humans, who knows? We'll put the probability at a whopping 5%. Okay, so maybe we'll dodge the zombie bullet, but will 2025 be the year a massive geomagnetic storm hits Earth and threatens our very existence? The probability of a geomagnetic storm is 100%. The sun itself has a solar cycle where periods of high activity alternate with periods of low activity. And the peak of solar cycle 25 is going to hit us in July of 2025. During this peak, more solar flares and sunspots will appear, increasing the chance of solar storms. A powerful storm can wreck our infrastructure on Earth, causing blackouts. It can also damage our satellites in space and disrupt aircraft communications. On the bright side, here on Earth, we'll get to see beautiful auroras in the night sky. But is this potential damage to communication systems a serious threat? Thankfully, with modern technology, we can detect upcoming problems and plan ahead. So, probability of storm, 100%. Probability of humans getting destroyed, 0%. Now, even if the sun doesn't create a massive storm to blow things up, eco-terrorists might. As new climate catastrophes emerge, more and more people are growing angry at the way our governments are handling them or not handling them. This could make way for forms of eco-terrorism. People might go out to destroy infrastructure, like oil fields or other operations that are harming our environment. Will these acts of eco-terrorism destroy humanity itself? Well, since the goal of these groups is ultimately to save the Earth, that's unlikely. So we put the probability at 11%. But they can cause some serious damage if they think that's the only way to get things to change. If eco-terrorists don't destroy humanity, maybe AI will. AI leader Sam Altman has warned us against the power of AI. And as users of ChatGPT, we've all seen it hallucinate and make things up. AI could be used in a number of terrifying ways, from spreading misinformation to maybe even being weaponized. Countries could make the next superweapon with the power of AI. This is a real and frightening possibility. Will 2025 be the year AI destroys us? It could be. We put the probability at 50%. If AI doesn't destroy us, will life on Earth be wiped out by another planet crashing into us? How about Mars? Well, if Mars came crashing into Earth, life would be over. There's absolutely no chance any of us would survive. As Mars veered out of its orbit and careened into us, tsunamis would rise on Earth. We'd experience massive earthquakes. At the moment of impact, a massive amount of heat would be generated and both planets would get liquefied. The good news? This is 100% not going to happen. You can most definitely cross this off your 2025 predictions list. Now, instead of all this death, let's talk about life. New moms and dads will have a tool at their disposal to ensure their brand new baby emerges A-OK. Whole genome sequencing is a test that can be done on a fetus to understand what's driving any emerging health conditions. Today, only a few specific genetic tests are done before a baby's born, but by sequencing the entire genome, doctors can proactively prepare for and treat any rare condition that might have gone undetected. The probability of being able to do this in 2025? It's 95%. Now, technology won't just be sequencing your baby's genome in 2025, it'll be able to read your mind. Using AI, scientists found a way to map neurons into a translation of people's actual thoughts. But on the bright side, for anyone who has a disease that affects their speech, being able to communicate through thoughts will be a valuable tool. People like stroke victims or those with Parkinson's. But if you're a criminal, well, you might have a problem. Forget about lying to the police or a judge about where you were on the night of the crime. They'll be able to read your mind. This technology combines an fMRI scan, which looks at where blood is flowing in your brain, with our old friend ChatGPT. But there's a challenge. In order to have mass deployment of this technology, you'd have to put MRIs everywhere. It's kind of expensive. But cost aside, the probability that this technology is ready to go in 2025? 75%. But it'll take a while before it dominates the entire world. Okay, now if this was a little scary for you, then let's up the stakes a bit. What if an asteroid hit Earth? Then you'd have much bigger problems than privacy. If you're thinking, but doesn't NASA track all the asteroids? Sorry, that would be a no. NASA does track most of the asteroids, and they know where most of the really big ones are. By their count, they've mapped 90% of them, but that still means 10% of them are out there unaccounted for. If a massive asteroid slammed into Earth, it would be like when the dinosaurs were wiped out. A massive explosion on Earth, sending dust and ash up into the air. This creates a nuclear winter that could lead to mass extinction. Luckily, we don't think that this is all that likely. Probably less than 5%. Okay, instead of destroying, let's talk about rebuilding. Rebuilding by rewilding. This is when landscapes that have been destroyed by human activity are restored to their original lush state. Will the major powers of the world embrace rewilding in 2025? We think that's a possibility. Rewilding is already happening in many different parts of the world. It's big in Ireland, which is committed to increasing forested areas from 11% to 18% by 2050. The probability that this grows across the world in 2025? We think that's 80%. Okay, for our last prediction, we want to end on something hopeful. Space exploration gives us hope that even if life gets snuffed out on Earth, we can maybe live elsewhere. And a trip to the moon is always the first stop. Will 2025 be the year of another moon landing? Well, maybe not a full landing, but in September of 2025, a flight around the moon is planned. This is NASA's Artemis mission. A crew of 4 will do a flyby around the moon. Originally planned for 2024, there were issues with the battery, ventilation, and temperature control that had to be resolved. So, what's the probability that humans will fly around the moon next year? We put it at 65%. You know what would be more exciting than flying around the moon? Well, flying to Jupiter. But that sounds like a story for another What If.